Jowenjocht konas tiet te tamach at Snuneymuxw. Haid abga si schwalakwa at Snuneymuxw. Haid abga lat limit te tamach ehwetauch te tamach ten aquail Tsumqwatun. Haidga si Snuneymuxw mistayoch. I first off want to start off by acknowledging the sacred land that we are on, which is Snuneymuxw, and raise my hands in great honor and respect to Snuneymuxw for watching over this land, for us to be here today, but also acknowledging and thanking the Snuneymuxw Mastayoch for sharing this land with us each and every day. Anta Titwiath Steetlum to eat a skakip at Tana Hanand. I'm going to share, I guess the modern word is prayer, but to me it's just a way of life. And it's more than a prayer to me, but the most easiest way for people to understand it is a prayer. And then I will share a song. Chachas almein haidka. Chacha tamo haidka. Chacha taat haidka. Haidka at a high all eight squale at an aquail. Haidka at a high all eight mit tamo eat mox dem at an aquail eat mox squale. Tichwam eats eight a witauch, tautelet the thema eyes, the tanaquail. Tichwam eat tweenatauch, and su taunach tet eitletst eat salitst. Tichwam e quam stuch te schwalwen the tanachwanand. Tichwam e chachen te kikalismus dimuch. Ichwam slasha kan stoch te kaki misdimuch seniwa te kaki out. Haitchka kwitst hwa tan tamach tan aquail Tsumqwatun. Nawash quam quams at a salitst tzitzel si an haitchka. Mostly more. Ishata Kashinto CM Haitapkam
Welcome.
Welcome.
Eichwanant.
And that means
Good evening.
a good evening. Okay.
Eichwanant.
Yeah, thank you. We were sitting with Tsumqwatun.
Our very good friend
Yeah.
Aichka.
who has spoken to us many times and sung for us many times, and sat with us on important occasions. And it's always such a pleasure to have you, so thank you for coming tonight.
Aichka.
Yeah.
Aichka for always inviting me.
Yeah. It's a great pleasure for us. Maybe I'll just dive in.
Please.
So one of the things I've wondered about often is when you were born, what were you named first? Did you have a traditional name first, or did you have an English name first?
I was just given an English name
Yep.
at birth, and it comes from late grandfather on my dad's side and my mom's side. And yeah, that's been my name for over 35 years until I was fortunate and blessed with a Hulquminum. Yeah, so my English name is Lawrence, but my traditional name is Tsumqwatun. Yeah.
And that's hereditary usually, isn't it?
I don't think of it in that sense, but yeah, when you get a name in the Coast Salish world, it ties you to a branch of your immediate family. And my name comes from my late great grandmother Hazel Good of Snuneymuxw, and her name is Tsumqwat.
Okay.
So they added the tun on the end to make it a male name. So there's always a male and a female aspect to our language. And that ties me to that family. When they hear Tsumqwatun, they'll be like, oh, he's from that family from Snuneymuxw. I know who that family name is. I know what kind of people they are. And you can tell a lot about people with their name. So,
Right.
and you have to go through a whole ceremony to have a name bestowed upon you. Not just anybody can get a name. Some people might not even have any names in their family that they remember.
Ah, okay.
So people, when they don't have a name, they probably feel poor. Like poor in spirit and poor in culture and poor in family.
Right.
I know I felt that way when I didn't have a name.
And how does it come about that you've earned the right to have a name, or who decides that?
I guess we get together as a family and we discuss a series of names that belong to our own immediate branch. And we go through the names and who holds those names. And you look at the person's character. You look at how they've carried themselves. You look at who they're going to become. And then you look at the batch of names from your ancestors and say, oh, this person was like this as well. Maybe he could carry this name or her. Oh, my daughter, she's very strong and she's very gentle at the same time. It's the same as my great-great-grandmother that has this name. Maybe we'll change it just a little bit to make it unique to her, but she still belongs to the branch.
Nice.
And you have to hire a good 30, 40 people to make the ceremony work.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually a pretty prestigious event, I guess you could say.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, if we were to remove the English aspect of it all, if you were born into your traditional culture, when would you be named with an indigenous name or a traditional name? Would it be right at birth, or is there a process where time is spent to see what this child is or how this child acts and then named?
I'm not as well versed in that realm.
Okay.
I do know some people have received a Hulquminum in infancy, and then as they became of age, they received a different name.
Ah, okay.
So I know some people that have two traditional names,
Okay.
and I question on when do they use this name, when do they use their old name. So I don't know enough about it to speak to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that is my follow-up. My follow-up question was because I know you on Facebook as Lawrence, and I also know you as Tsumqwatun. And so, how is that for you to have the two names? And when do you use one versus the other? How does that, what does that feel like? I guess I know there's a couple of questions in there, but
Well, if I could, it would just be Tsumqwatun forever.
okay.
In every realm.
Yeah.
Because of the way that my late great-grandmother carried herself and as much work as she done for the nation and for the language and how she raised my grandpas and my grandmas. That's an honor. I've been really blessed to be connected to her because of the role that I'm taking on these days with the language and the culture and the songs. And I would rather just be known as Tsumqwatun.
Right. So they very much named you correctly then.
They did?
Yes,
They chose the right.
They
yeah,
chose the right name for you, huh?
Of course.
Yeah.
So teaching and restoring the language is of utmost importance to you, and you've been studying and working towards your master's degree in that field?
Yeah, I've been actually learning how to read in the very beginning. About 20 years ago was the hardest part. But once I figured out how to make all of the sounds in the language, then I could read anything in Hulquminum. And that kind of gave me a head start now that I've joined the Simon Fraser program. I'm in my third year for my master's, and I'm just getting ready to start writing my thesis on the language and singing. So language is my whole life.
Yeah. Well, congratulations and good luck, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
When I first met you, it was through your work at the school board that I met you, and about that time you started doing the Singing with Sayetzis events, and that Sayetzis, I understand, refers to walking in two worlds. Do I have that right? Sort of.
A general idea.
Yeah.
You can't really translate Hulquminum into English and make it mean the same thing.
Right.
But that's the closest we could come to that concept of walking in two worlds. You can break that word down, and it's 3 different words into one, and different people look at it differently. And the elder that we talked to about it said that is close to walking in two worlds. So, Tsumqwatun. Yeah.
When I first met you, I was pleasantly surprised, actually, that the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District had an Aboriginal and Indigenous education component. How are we doing?
I would like to hope that we're doing well. It's been 6 or 7 years in the district for me now, and as much as I'm pouring in, I would hope that, people are blossoming and flourishing from everything that I do, because I give my whole life to everything that I'm a part of. And I don't go around asking, how is Sayetzis these days? Or, I don't talk to people to follow up on how the district is doing, but it is a shift. It is a big shift, and we are really ahead of a lot of districts in the province in relation to how they are working with the local territories and the nations of where their schools are situated. And, our school district superintendent and other people at the top level are meeting with different people all over the place to explain Sayetzis and how it all began and everything that we are doing to restore not to restore the way of life, I guess you could say.
Well, I would imagine there's two components. One would be to see that the Indigenous children that are in this public school system are getting a good education, but another important thing would be to see that the non-Indigenous children are being educated as to our history and cultures. Is that working?
You know, I see my cousins in the school walk with their head higher versus a time when we felt worthless,
Yeah.
less than. And, you know, it's because of the work that we're all doing. You know, I'm a part of it. I know my late great-grandmother and other people of that generation started it by banging on the door of the school district saying there needs to be changes. And if you look through the lens of the Indigenous people of the land, your world will only get better. And it is about helping the local children more than anything. You know, as a people, we look at all children as our own. That's just how we were brought up, because when we were in the big house, it was a massive 60-foot home, and it housed 60 to 80 people in one home. So that's all the same branches living in one home, and all the children, everyone raised them.
Yeah.
So
That's literally raised by the community, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to the fact that I think compared to when I went to school, and I was in Tsumqwatun, I grew up there. There was zero education on the Indigenous people. Yet I lived in a place that was named, like this is Nanaimo, which is known as Snuneymuxw, right? But I actually lived in Tsumqwatun, which is like the traditional name
of it. Yeah.
But there was nothing. And then I have two daughters that are in the school system here. They're going to graduate in June, but they've both come home with projects and had a great interest in the culture and the Indigenous culture here. And that has been from the school system because it's not something we've said, hey, you need to go explore this. It's been given to them by the school system. So there definitely has been a shift that I think we can be proud of. And certainly it's a tip of the iceberg in my view. You know, so much more can be done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when I'm talking to the kids in the high school, I say this is who we are as Snuneymuxw people, but also as Coast Salish people, it's all the same. But we are your neighbors. We are your neighbors, you know, so much so even though we don't live right next door to each other, we kind of do in the bigger sense. And you don't want your neighbors to be strangers, so I will give you everything that I know to help you in your walk of life to be successful. And that will happen by understanding where you are. Because people from this island may go to Tokyo, they may go to Australia, they may go to India, they may go to Hawaii, they may go to New Zealand to learn about their culture and their diet and their rituals and their songs. But when you come to this area of the world, the things that I talk about are everything that we are as a people. And you'll become richer somewhere else for knowing this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, opening up your mind to it. You know, I don't even know it all. Like, I'll never know it all. And I'll pledge my entire life to it. Yeah.
But when we talk about spirituality and First Nations spirituality, it's kind of like talking about Christianity. Like there's, you know, so many different sects and variations. So while I'm sure there's a common current, mostly the finding of the divine in all of life, I'm sure from nation to nation, there are different cultures and different religious refinements and different traditions and rituals, and ceremonies. So we can't just kind of lump Indigenous culture into one big pot.
The way they used to.
Yeah.
Of course,
Yeah.
you know, when I heard of Indians in Canada, I thought of people living in teepees and riding horses and hunting buffaloes. But as time went on, you began to hear stories of origin pop up all across the country. And, you know, some people refer to this as Turtle Island because there's a story of a woman falling from the sky.
Right.
And other people believe that they were born from the Big Dipper, some great relative using the Big Dipper, scooping out water and pouring it on the mountain. And then roaring down the mountain was a different batch of animals. And they grabbed another scoop of water and poured it down the mountain. As rushing down the mountain were the fish. And it goes on. Some people say that they were born from falling from the sky. Some people born from fire. Some people were blown into existence through bouncing off of stars or bouncing off of trees. So everybody is unique, but we have a same general belief in our spirit and that we are one with all of creation, and it's inseparable. You can't take it apart.
Well, this is where you're so aligned with unity principles.
Yes.
One life. Yeah.
Can I go back a little to something you said earlier? Because I got very emotional when you said it, and if this is me prodding too much, let me know. But you use the term worthless, and I'm curious. I know a little bit about you, but I don't know you that well. And was that your experience when you were younger? Did you have that feeling of being worthless because your culture wasn't prevalent in your life? And what did that feel like? And how did you overcome that? Because you're certainly, for me, a person that I can relate to, and I don't feel like I need to try to break down a wall that might have been built up from the past with you. I know internally I have a little bit of shame from my ancestry and I don't know what they did or didn't do, but there's just that feeling. But at the same time, I don't get that from you. And yet, if you had a time in your life where you felt worthless, for you to have come to the place you are is like, that's incredible. And so I would love to hear a little bit about that, if you don't mind sharing.
It's a pretty hard upbringing, that's for sure. And we are a direct byproduct of residential school and alcoholism and neglect and drugs and abuse and all of those stigmas that come from not knowing love.
Yeah.
And, I was in foster care for many number of years in my early childhood. And it got to the point where, I knew that I was different, but I didn't know how. Until I started getting beat up. People were beating me up, saying, "Oh, you dirty Indian, go back to where you came from. You're not from here. Why are you even here?" Things like kids say, right? And it got to the point where I was sitting on a tree at Fairview Elementary just crying, "Why, God, why?" And I was like, I'm going to scrape the Indian off. Like, I don't want to be Indian anymore. I'm going to get rid of this. Being a child at that time, you don't know these kind of things, right? But I remember just crying my eyes out, why am I an Indian? And then I turned around the next day and I said, wait a minute, what is an Indian? Because I grew up in the white system. And I started watching movies, like Dances with Wolves, or I read in the encyclopedias or in a social studies book. And I thought that was me. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm an Indian. I'm different. And fast forward life, I was in Cowichan for tribal journeys. And it kind of popped up again, where we had to stand up and share the best of who we are as Snuneymuxw people. And at that time, during the tribal journeys, what you do is you share songs with the hosts and everybody in attendance, and you give away gifts to the host nation for feeding you and letting you sleep there, and you say all your haichkas to everybody that you need to say for the tribal journeys. But when we're sitting up there, I'm like, oh, looking at all my family, and there was a good 30 of us. I'm like, what are we going to do? Who's going to speak the language? What songs are we going to sing? And everybody was looking at each other like, I don't know. And at that point, I'm like, oh, I felt such shame. And that worthlessness that you're talking about hit me. And I'm like, if I ever have a child, they will never know this feeling. And that was the catalyst that, pole vaulted me into who I was to become. And, I'd tell that story a handful of times, and I would just be bawling because that little boy inside of me is finally getting recognized, and he's in a safe place to talk about that story. And nowadays, I try not to go to that route, but I feel it's necessary for people to hear something like that because I'm one of you. I'm one of you guys, so I have to share that so you know, like, it's not all roses and butterflies, or, you know, something like that.
Far from it.
It's not a rose. There's mud in the rose garden, right? Is really what you're alluding to, and thank you for sharing that.
And
I
thank
so
God for
appreciate
people
that.
like you who are doing this work so that the next generation of children doesn't have to come from that place, go through that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was the language. I think the language brought me back to life, to be to who I am. And the songs, you know, I'm big on energy, and I'm big on expressing myself and trying to understand a little bit more every day. Like, I beg and I plead for a little bit more so that I can find a way to help others. And that's who you see me as, that's how you know me as, and that's the work that I've done. And I think one of the big things was the blanket exercise. And, you know, I YouTubed it, I went on Google and I searched it, and I'm like, oh, so it's pretty much Canada's history, where they're moving blankets out of the way and people are, like, it's the history, right? But it didn't compare to being in the blanket exercise. And we'd done the blanket exercise, and there was like 7 or 8 people left out of 40, and we had to go around sharing. And then as soon as I was given the talking stick, just waterfalls. So it was like me stepping out of the shadows of myself,
Right.
to really understand who I am. And
Well, for those that don't know, what is the black blanket exercise for anybody watching?
so it's like, I guess it's like a role play of history where there are, let's say, 25 blankets on the floor, and everybody has to go stand on certain blankets, and every blanket represents a territory within Canada. And then they have these cue cards that talk about the Métis, that talk about the Iroquois, that talk about the Indian Act, that all of these different things that happen throughout Canada's history. And they would say that, well, if you're standing on this blanket, you were killed in war, or you have gotten smallpox from blankets. Your whole tribe is gone, so you have to step away. And once nobody's on the blanket, they pull it away. And at the end of it, there's only a couple blankets left, when it was a big, vibrant
Right.
thing.
It's very experiential and very moving. Yeah.
So you're really seeing the devastation, right?
And it's educational too, because it talks about the doctrine of discovery and terra nullius, and, you know, all these legal rights the settlers had to assume that the land was unoccupied and theirs to be taken, which comes as quite a shock. You know?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. And do you have? I have more questions
Well, go
that are
ahead.
in that line, because
Of course.
because you know, my curiosity, and you touched on it, Patricia, is the way you're bringing up your children, and you have, I would say, blessed us at Unity here by allowing your children to come into our center at various times, and them having the courage to sing and share what they know of their tradition that you're passing on to them. And I'm just curious how, I guess, how is it that you have the idea that you should do this? That, because it might be like more natural to go, no, I'm not going to let you near my children, right? Because of the wrong that was done to you, yet you're not being that way here that I see. And I'm curious where that comes from. What is it that you're thinking that you're accomplishing with that, or that you're trying to, I guess, nurture your children with?
I guess a big part of it is, like, you don't know how to do something until you're in it. I don't know if you understand that. Like,
Yep.
I never would have been able to become a public speaker if I wasn't standing on the canoe and there were thousands and thousands of people in the Victoria Causeway and I had to ask permission to come ashore. If I didn't do that, I probably wouldn't be here today. So similar concept with my children. I want them to sing and drum in many, many different places. That way, when the time comes and they have to take up on my role, they'll just be able to get up and do it on their own.
Right.
So it's basically like opening them up, trying to help them understand who they are in here. And one of the biggest things in the way that we carry ourselves is generosity and kindness. And I'm all, you guys know me, right? Like I'm always trying to give everything that I can. And in that way, more comes back.
Of course. Yeah.
It just keeps coming back. I'm blessed. We're all blessed in that way, right?
Yeah. That's a unity principle, right? the law of reciprocity, and you can't outgive the universe. Like it's not possible to give more than what Creator, Great Spirit, the Infinite will give back, right?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But treating children as adults the way you do, I mean, so many of us demean children really by not giving them those kind of opportunities to grow. And
Not trusting them that they actually have a wisdom that we're unaware of.
and to be nervous and stand up and do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember being in the other, well, not in this building, but the other room when the old building was there. My daughter was singing, she started crying. I'm like, it's okay, don't worry about it. But if she didn't do that, then she wouldn't, I guess you could say, level up or something.
Yeah.
Or reach a deeper part of herself that she may have never reached without that moment.
Well, we've seen you do that.
Yeah.
You know, being so moved by your own song that you're weeping and you keep going. And what a tremendous example that is for your kids and all the kids, and for all us grown-ups too. Yeah.
Is there anything you would like us to know that you don't think we know, or that we would gain some deeper insight of, or?
I guess more than anything, now that I think about it, was to be able to acknowledge the territory and speak the language before we even started. That's just who I am. That's just how we should operate as a people. Because right now this room is full.
Right.
Even though it's just a few humans, there are people that I brought in the door to protect me and to share with me what needed to be heard. And you guys have your own ancestors that are here as well. And the language of this land is Hulquminum. So me speaking that language would have let them know what we're up to. And
Wow.
We apologize. We should have known that. We do it on Sundays.
yeah, it's just a way of life.
Yes.
If if you think like that, even if you don't speak the language, there's a few words that you could probably say that will let them know, because it's all about intention. And you can say, "Oh, Hajka." You can tell that I kind of didn't mean it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, "Oh my goodness, Hajka." There's a difference between the way that you carry yourself, and they feel it and they hear it and they can read your thoughts. And it's like looking at somebody behind closed doors the way they really are when everybody else is gone. And when I speak that language, this is telling them that we're trying to move forward in a meaningful way, and we need their help, because we're only human and we can only go so far before spirit takes over and carries us as far as we need to be carried, and then we hop back on and we try our best to keep moving on. So language is everything to me, and would have started with the song as well, a song, and asking for that help, not only from the Great Spirit or the Creator or whatever people might call, but everything around us, like the trees and the animals and the birds and everything that's awake out there now would hear it. Oh, look at my grandson Tsumqwatun, look at him. I can hear him through the walls, I can feel him. Then they know that something meaningful is going on if I've been called forward to talk to beautiful people. So.
Right. Well, I apologize.
Is it too late?
No. What we can do is just add it in the beginning, because it's a video, right?
Yeah.
So we can cut it, but then we could start off with me doing that.
Yeah.
And then add it after, kind of thing.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's just how I am all the time.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect awareness. Can I keep all this in though? Because
Oh, of course, yeah.
I think it's
And then-
perfect to know that
And still have the beginning.
and still have the beginning.
And the beginning at the end. And
Yeah. Because that's thank you for that. That just the light just went on around that in a deeper way than I've thought of it before. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, let me begin or end by acknowledging that we are on traditional and unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw Nation here, and we acknowledge your contribution and your care of the land and our indebtedness to you. Aishka.